Every Thursday, like clockwork, the scent of Mama Kafayat's pepper soup filled the air of the crowded market square of Edo town. It lured customers from miles away. Her store, always neat, stood at the corner, well-positioned where buses and people passed day and night. But it wasn't just the aroma of her soup that drew people in, there was something catchy about Mama Kafayat herself. She had tall, regal posture and eyes as sharp as a hawk's. She carried herself like a queen, never rushing, never raising her voice at her customers. Mama Kafayat had relocated to Edo town 2 years ago, and the pepper soup business was the second business she would venture into. The townsfolk swore by her pepper soup. They praised it as the finest in the town. Some claimed it was the secret blend of spices, others whispered that it had to be something more, maybe something diabolical. Yet, no matter the rumors that were carried, one thing was certain. No one could resist the taste of what Mama Kafayat cooked. She made sure of that. Now, what set Mama Kafayat's pepper soup apart from the others wasn't just the aroma, it was the size of her meat. While the other pepper soup sellers sliced their meat into small pieces, Mama Kafayat cut hers to be thick, with each chunk practically daring you to take a bite. Goat meat, cow beef, or cow leg, whatever you fancied, Mama Kafayat's portions looked like they belonged at a royal feast. Each piece stood big in her pot, tender and dripping with spices. One bowl of her pepper soup could feed two, but no one ever wanted to share. In the town, most of the men don't eat their wives' food on a Wednesday night or Thursday morning. The women of the town had long given up trying, because what was the point? Come Thursday, every pot of stew or plate of rice sat untouched, cold and forgotten on the kitchen table. The men saved their appetites, their stomachs rumbling in anticipation, for the pepper soup that awaited them at Mama Kafayat's store. By midday on Thursdays, the market buzzed with the same story, Mama Kafayat's pepper soup. No one else could match her. No one could deny the truth that once you tasted Mama Kafayat's pepper soup, no other pepper soup would ever satisfy you again. It was as if the soup itself called you back, bowl after bowl, week after week. Other pepper sellers tried to compete, offering their best bowls, but they just couldn't match hers. People would always bypass 3 or 4 other pepper soup stalls just to get to Mama Kafayat's store. Men would crowd around her store, their eyes gleaming with hunger, waiting their turn just to be served and get a taste. Some of the wives of the town resented how their husbands would leave the house without breakfast, or skip dinner the night before, just to make sure they had enough room for Mama Kafayat's legendary soup. They complained, but deep down, they too understood, because the majority of the women as well couldn't resist the rich, enticing aroma that hung in the air, calling to them like a spell. The other pepper sellers watched with envy, their stalls quiet, while Mama Kafayat's stall was a hive of activity, as her customers laughed and licked their fingers, satisfied in a way that only her pepper soup could deliver. What's her secret? The other sellers would murmur behind her back. Why do they all flock to her? Some of the other pepper soup sellers claimed it was the size of the meat that kept people coming, others believed it was her unique ability to balance flavors and the type of spices she used. But those who observed more closely began to wonder if it was the meat itself that held the real mystery, or there was something else. What, exactly, was Mama Kafayat serving them? They all wondered. Mama Remy, a fellow pepper soup seller, was one of those people who wondered what was in Mama Kafayat's pepper soup. One Thursday afternoon, Mama Remy gathered her courage. She had been watching Mama Kafayat closely for months, eyeing the steady stream of customers that always seemed to pass her own store by. Her frustration had reached its boiling point. She had to know what was the secret behind those enormous cuts of meat that Mama Kafayat served so effortlessly. Where could she possibly be getting them? Mama Remy wiped her hands on her apron, glanced at her nearly empty stall, and strode towards Mama Kafayat. When she reached her, Mama Kafayat was calmly stirring her pot. Mama Kafayat, Mama Remy began. I couldn't help but notice your meat. It's bigger than anyone else's in the market. People say you have a special supplier. Where do you get it from? Mama Kafayat smiled and said, "Oh, Mama Remy, it's true. I do have a supplier, but he comes from a faraway place, very far. You wouldn't be able to buy from him. His hands are full, and he only delivers to only a few of us." Mama Remy was surprised. Something about Mama Kafayat's answer didn't sit right with her. But surely, there must be a way I could speak to him. Just to see if, Mama Remy said, but Mama Kafayat cut her off. Oh no, it's not that simple. My supplier is special. His goods are exclusive. It's taken years to secure him, and I'm afraid he has no time for anyone else. Mama Remy looked at Mama Kafayat, but she wasn't convinced. There was something that Mama Remy couldn't ignore. She thanked her and returned to her store, but she knew that no, there was something else at play, something Mama Kafayat wasn't saying. Mama Remy looked back at the plump meat chunks floating in Mama Kafayat's pot, and she couldn't shake the feeling that this secret was much more than just a faraway supplier. One Thursday evening, after yet another long day of watching her husband rush out without so much as glancing at her dinner, Tinu had had enough. She sat by the window, arms crossed, eyes fixed on the market square. Her husband, like most of the men in town, was at Mama Kafayat's store, devouring that pepper soup as though it held the secret to life itself. For months, Tinu had swallowed her frustration, pretending to ignore the way her husband seemed bewitched by Mama Kafayat's cooking. But tonight, something snapped. She decided she would no longer be another helpless wife, watching her home-cooked meals go to waste. No, she would get to the root of this mystery. Whatever it took. That evening, after her husband returned home, belly full and satisfied, Tinu quietly packed a small bag. The next morning, she told him she was traveling to visit her sister in the neighboring village the following Thursday. By the following Thursday evening, around 3 p.m., Tinu left home and hung around the market. As soon as evening came and the market began to empty, she slipped into the shadows, her eyes glued to Mama Kafayat's store. She watched as the last customers thanked her with wide smiles, their bowls in hand. Tinu waited, hiding behind a row of market stalls, and then she saw it. Mama Kafayat didn't head home toward her home. Instead, she looked to be sure no one was watching and took a different path, one that wound through the forest on the outskirts of town. Tinu's breath caught. Where could she be going at this hour? Tomorrow, which was Friday, was the rest day for the market, so sellers don't open their stores until 2 p.m. in the afternoon, but where could Mama Kafayat be going at this hour? Tinu continued to follow at a safe distance. The deeper they went into the forest, the more uneasy Tinu felt, but she pressed on, determined to discover the truth. Just then, as if aligning with her purpose, the wind began to blow. It was going to rain. How come? Tinu wondered. It didn't look like it would rain when she decided to follow Mama Kafayat earlier that evening, but rain or no rain, she must find out the truth. For what seemed like an eternity, Tinu followed, her heart thudding in her chest. Then, finally, Mama Kafayat came to a stop. She stood before a clearing, then knelt beside a large stone slab. She reached into a sack by her side and pulled out something shining and heavy. Tinu couldn't see it clearly, but the soft thud of the object landing on the stone made her blood run cold. She knew she had stumbled upon something far more than she could have imagined. She clamped her hand over her mouth to stifle a gasp. What? Mama Kafayat was not just preparing pepper soup for the market. Whatever she was doing here, alone in the woods, was something no one should see. Tinu took a slow step back, her heart racing, her mind screaming for her to run. But then she missed a step, and a twig snapped beneath her foot. Mama Kafayat froze and rose up slowly to her feet, her eyes scanning the trees, searching the shadows. But Tinu didn't wait to see if she had been spotted. She turned and ran, her heart hammering in her chest. She ran and didn't stop until she found herself on the open path. She had been lucky, she told herself. Thank God it had begun to rain, and she knew the woods like the back of her palm. Thank God that Mama Kafayat hadn't spotted her too. But what she had seen, what was that? Something in her mind told her the answers to that question lay deeper than a single night in the woods. Tinu decided to return the following Thursday. This time, she would not follow Mama Kafayat at a distance. She would get closer, to see everything clearly. So, on the next market day, she did the same as before. She told her husband she was traveling, then slipped into the shadows as night fell. She waited until Mama Kafayat finished her business and followed her into the forest. But this time, instead of stopping at the clearing where Tinu had first seen her, Mama Kafayat walked further into the woods, deeper into the outskirts of town. Tinu followed, her curiosity outweighing her fear. After what felt like hours, Mama Kafayat approached a small, old farm. She walked up to a man and they exchanged a few words before the man disappeared inside. Moments later, he returned, dragging the carcass of a goat and cow. The animals were dead, its body limp and lifeless. But instead of her being disgusted, Mama Kafayat seemed pleased. She handed the man a few coins as he passed the animals to her. What? Dead animals? Tinu's mind raced as the truth hit her. Mama Kafayat was buying animals that had already died from one disease or the other, animals that no one else would dare to touch. They were cheaper, far cheaper than the fresh livestock from the market. Oh! Wow! That was how she could afford to serve such large portions of meat in her pepper soup, while other sellers struggled to make a profit. Tinu thought. Mama Kafayat loaded the dead animals onto the small wheelbarrow provided by the farm, and headed back to the town. Tinu carefully followed her back. She stayed far enough behind to avoid detection, but close enough to see the animals stored in a deep freezer in her small, hidden cold room. Tinu shuddered at the truth. Why did no one else seem to notice even till now? The meat that everyone in town craved, that made the men skip their wives' meals, was the flesh of animals that had died, not killed, and sold for cheap price. Mama Kafayat's pepper soup was a deadly dish that brought death closer to the town, one bowl at a time. That night, Tinu couldn't sleep. The image of the dead animals haunted her every thought. She tossed and turned in bed while her husband snored beside her, oblivious to the horror she had uncovered. By morning, Tinu knew what she had to do. The town couldn't go on like this, couldn't be fed poison by Mama Kafayat. At first light, she dressed quickly and headed straight to the palace, determined to speak with the town king, Oba Adidran. When she got to the palace, Tinu explained everything to the king. How she had followed Mama Kafayat deep into the forest, and the diseased animals being sold at the farm. The king listened in silence. After she was done, He ordered his trusted guards to prepare themselves for an investigation and pack a day long of every essentials they would need while in the woods. Mama Kafayat must be caught red-handed. The following Thursday, Tinu led the king's men back through the woods, her heart pounding in her chest. They watched as Mama Kafayat exchanged money for the dead animals, and in that instant, the palace guards evaded the farm. Mama Kafayat was shocked. She had been caught red-handed. One by one, she and the farm workers who had been selling the diseased animals were marched back to the town square. By dawn, words had spread like wildfire. The town people gathered in the marketplace, shocked at the news. Mama Kafayat stood and was no longer the proud cook who stood behind her pepper soup stall, smiling warmly at her customers. Now, she was disgraced. Oba Adidran was disappointed. He had seen many betrayals in his time, but this was a betrayal of the people's trust in the most intimate way, through the food they ate. Oba Adidran ordered first as punishment that Mama Kafayat be paraded through the street of Ido town. By evening, when they came back to the market square, he told her she was banished from the town. Never will she step foot in the town again, or she would face a far worse fate. But Oba Adidran's judgment did not stop there. He knew that banishing her alone would not be enough, so he sent word and her picture to the neighboring towns to warn them about her evil ways. Mama Kafayat left Ido town, but the lesson she left behind remained etched in the minds of everyone who had eaten from her pot. Now, the moral lesson from the story is the importance of being cautious about where and what we eat outside the home. Just as the townspeople trusted Mama Kafayat's pepper soup without question, we too can fall into the trap of assuming that all food sold outside is safe. Hence, we should be mindful of the sources of our food, be it cooked and uncooked, as not everyone prioritizes health and safety over profit. Thank you for listening. We love you, our viewers, at Dammy's Folktales. Thank you for your constant support. Please, give our video a thumbs up to support us once again. It won't take much of your time, but it will help us to grow. And if this is your first time here, don't be a stranger. Kindly subscribe.